Well, I didn't know if anybody would wait, but thanks for waiting. It's good to see you, and I'm delighted to be here. The day was a long day. It's the longest trip I ever have taken to give a speech.
Woo! Thank you.
But not in distance. Not in distance. There's an echo. Not in distance. How about it? Where is it? It wasn't in distance so long. It was just the duration, because I had to have an hour and a half drive from my house to the airport in Houston. So, and I wanted to take off at 7 o'clock or so to make sure I got here at noon, look around the campus and visit and come with and visit with you. But the storms came in, and it took a long time to get to the airport, and then all the flights were canceled. The flight didn't take off till a couple hours ago. The flight was the easiest part. But anyway, it must have been a nuisance to think I was going to be here at 5 o'clock. But I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad that they waited around to visit, because we hopefully can have a discussion if time permits. But I'm delighted to meet young people who have just a curiosity, and not a total understanding of anything, but a curiosity to know what's going on in the world. I think that's the most important thing. And if you go through school and think you know everything, or decide you don't want to know anything, that's sad. But if you go through school and you should remain curious, and that's the way I felt about everything in college is, whether it was economic policy or history. Of course, I didn't know medicine, but I just for some reason became very curious. What makes the world tick? How do these things happen? And I was raised remembering war so much, because when I was 5 years old, I remember World War II breaking out. Actually I was sick in 1941. And remember that was a big deal. Family members going, family members not coming back. Then a few years later, there was the Korean War. Then a few years later, there was the Vietnam War. And it always involves people going off and getting killed. And so I became very curious about why does that happen. And then when I found out, the founders understood this. They wanted to protect us against all this stuff, all these wars going on. So they put they put the directions in the Congress that the people had to make the decision of whether we go to war or not, and that's why they put it in the Constitution that the executive branch does not have the authority to take us to war. So,
Amen.
This week we have an example of the expansion of the imperial presidency. A chance where the Congress finally woke up a little bit and said, hey, we don't need to be in this war, even though we're not losing a lot of troops, but we're participants. We're participants in this war in Yemen, this senseless killing of people that never did a thing to us. And it's women and children and poor people are dying because of what we do. And so the people, or at least the Congress, woke up and said to the president under the War Power Resolution that you have to quit. So it gets vetoed. So that tells you something about where we stand. And every president since the War Powers Resolution was passed in 1973 has taken that position. They don't like the War Powers Resolution because it's a vehicle to try to rein in the president. The real sad part about all this is, even though I took the position that we ought to use it, I didn't support it, because it literally gives the president permission to go to war for 90 days. And then after the war starts, then they pile on you. If you want to stop the war, then they say, oh, you're un-American, you don't want to support the troops, and they ran on and on. I heard all that talk when I was running for the presidency, that I thought, we ought to bring our troops in. I had the audacity to suggest one time in a Christian audience, I think it was in South Carolina, that I said, why don't we have a foreign policy based on the fact that if we don't want people to have it do to us, we should do it to them. You know, the golden rule type thing. I got booed for that, you know. So, I think if you're interested in liberty, and I'm assuming that most of you are, and if you're just curious, that's great. Or if you think you aren't for the amount of liberty that I will propose, I think that one thing is that you can't have liberty if you have constant wars. We have constant wars that have been going on, and I don't know if you noticed this week. Jimmy Carter pointed out that about 246 years, 16 years, is all that we had where we weren't engaged in some warmongering someplace. And that's the way we live, but it's much worse, you know, since this century. This century's been a horrible century for this. So if you're interested in liberty, you have to be interested in the issue of war. And basically what you're getting interested in is interested in the use of violence and force. You know, you might be surprised, but I'm for gun control. I'm for gun control, and controlling the guns are in the hands of the government.
Woo! Yeah.
The Department of Homeland Security has 200 people employed by you. You'll pay. If you don't pay this year, next year, there's debt out there. And they all carry guns. So I would say that we should control those guns. Not only should we control the guns, we probably ought to fire just about all those 200,000 people who are supposed to be protecting us. In a free society, the responsibility of making you safe and secure is yours and your friends and your neighbors and your community, not the Department of Homeland Security, nor the United Nations or NATO or anybody else. I'll tell you what, we would be a lot safer and we would be a lot freer.
Amen.
There is no doubt that 9/11, 2001 was a big deal and a big issue and a horror. And I talked a lot about it at the time, especially what the ramifications were going to be. And I had one beef about it. I would never have diminished the significance and the horror of it. But the one thing that still annoys me is they didn't ask a special question. You know, if you read in the newspaper of, oh, there's been a murder on a campus, a murder over here, somebody did this, what's the first thing they do? They look for a suspect. Where's the motivation? Who could have done this? What is the motivation? But you know, that is one question that they would not ask, and really they have not asked. And because the one individual that I believe was telling the truth, even though he was a monster of a person, he said, this was bin Laden. They asked him afterwards, and there was an interview, and he said there were 3 reasons why Al-Qaeda was willing to do that and commit suicide. And he says one was the way the Palestinians were treated, and 2, the constant bombing of Iraq and the killing, you know, all in the name of humanitarianism. 500,000 children that was dismissed by our Secretary of State. And then the other reason was that their religion taught that the Arabian Peninsula is Holy Land. And there was an agreement that we would put troops on, and we had troops on. Matter of fact, one of our top officials after that happened, he said, you know, that might be a problem, so let's take the troops out of there. But nobody asked those questions and dwell on that. Matter of fact, this whole idea of suicide terrorism essentially happens with some Muslims, some radicals, but a lot of other ones. Matter of fact, they're not the worst. It's people who feel like they're being occupied and they're totally out of control, and they will commit suicide to defend their homeland. So we need to understand that, because that is our foreign policy. But the bigger principle is what does our country exist for? And if you have a country, it really isn't the goal of making us safe. Yes, if somebody invades us, we're supposed to defend our country and we should have a national defense. But this whole idea that we're going to be safe and secure, you know, a safety net economically, we're going to make sure you're not mistreated socially, that you're treated well, and that make sure that in order for you to be safe, you have to be politically correct. in everything you say and do, so we want to take care of you and make you safe. That is not the purpose of whoever, in my estimation. The purpose of government in a free society is to protect your freedom and your liberty. That is the goal. Now, a lot of people get turned off with this because who's going to take care of me? How am I going to be safe? Who's going to be safe? And they go on and on. They don't understand economic. They don't understand history that shows that the freer the society, the more prosperous it is. They don't understand that the freer the market, the bigger the middle class is. But they just say, oh no, somebody has to take care of it. The assumption of responsibility is something a lot of people can't accept because they've been taught for many, many generations now, especially the last 100 years since the progressive era started, that somebody else is supposed to do this. And they don't have a responsibility, and they don't want that responsibility. And then there's this myth that since we have been the greatest and the freest and the safest nations, and we are a great nation and we are exceptional, they come up along with this conclusion that because of this, and they put it in moral terms, that we morally have this responsibility to act like the Jacobins. The Jacobins go around the world and say, look, we are the best, and we're going to make you listen and do things. If you don't, you're in big trouble. And that's how we go around and get into trouble. I've argued the case frequently that there's on foreign policy. To me, I think it's tragic because we are powerful, we are wealthy, we have a lot of freedom, and we have the prosperity, and we have essentially all the weapons, spend more money than the next 12 countries put together. But the people who are aggressive and know exactly what they want, and they're empire builders, and they love it, but they do it in moral tones. That this is what is important, and we are good, so we have to do this. But I argue that what we do is we go to a country, our diplomats, I call them authoritarian troublemakers, but they're the diplomats. So they go to these countries and they say, this is what we want you to do. And if you do it, we're going to give you a lot of money. If you don't, we're going to bomb you. And we've been doing that for a long, long time. And the example I used just yesterday, I think it was on Ecuador, the tragedy of Assange. Can you believe our participation in how we have treated that person and claimed that we're for freedom and liberty? I think if this country is willing to stand by and do nothing about it and say nothing, the courts won't protect them. Only the people can protect Assange if we speak out and say this is wrong and it should be done. But we argued the case that we had this obligation to extradite him and bring him to this country and prosecute him. And, he's not an American citizen, but we're going to prosecute him for treason again. But as soon as that was announced, in a short period of time, it just happened that I think we have a little influence in the IMF. And I don't think anybody's planning on getting out no matter what they say. So the IMF just happened on that particular day, the day before, so they authorized $4.4 billion to Ecuador, along with $6 more billion for the other multinationals. They were promised $10 billion if they would release him and turn him over to freedom and justice and the courts in this country. That is atrocious. That is just horrible civil libertarianism, and it's just horrible of the penalty put on people who have to pay for all this. And it's the innocent American victim that said, oh no, so it won't cost us anything. There's arguments now that you can have everything for free, and there's a Federal Reserve, and they like the Federal Reserve. They say, they just can print up the money. And that's the argument you're hearing now. So the expenditures, are totally out of control, and they're downplayed. But in all that I say and do, if you're talking about the most important economic issue, it's the debt. It is the debt that is out of control, and it's worldwide. It's based on a fiat currency, the paper dollar, and there are no controls and regulations on it. And this particular administration and this particular Congress, and it's bipartisan, they have no serious concerns. When you hear every once in a while some very, very liberal Democrat getting up and saying, hey, you governors are spending too much. I think you should live under the Constitution and not spend that money on that. What a bunch of baloney. So the debt, though, is totally out of control. And everything is supposed to be free. Free medical care, free education, the whole works, free houses, free medical, whatever is needed. And but of course, nothing is for free. There is always a payment. The question is, who are the victims? Who's going to pay for this? And I'm looking at a lot of victims right here. You might not know it. You might still be high middle income class and living well, and you can get a job and you have a good education and all this. But you're going to pay. And we pay in a lot of ways. We pay because of this social disturbance that we have, the economic problems and the foreign policy. There's already a payment built in there. I think the biggest payment is the loss of personal liberty. You just think of what's happened since 9/11. We got to go after the enemy and deal with the enemy and punish the enemy for what they're doing to us. But I didn't know I was part of the enemy. And when I go through the airport, they think I am. It's just a horror. And the worst part is not too many people are speaking up. That's why I'm delighted to talk with people I think are thinking about this and trying to work it out. And the big question is, what should you do? Is it time that we have to take up arms? No, I don't even advocate that. I think that there's still those 200,000 Homeland Security people, and they have our guns, and right now they're trying to take more away. But it is something that is damaging to us. The situation now that we have all this social welfareism and political correctness and social justice warriors. Loss of liberty. I mean, people aren't really free. Is your property free? If you're a landowner, you own a home. Do you think you really own that? You can't do hardly anything without paying rent, and the rent keeps going up. So, it's very annoying. I can list dozens and dozens of problems. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, I think the most important thing is being as well educated as possible, which I tried to do, in college, and got involved with the Foundation for Economic Education. And I think self-education and understanding of where the problem is and not listening to the propaganda. Now, I had a challenge because there wasn't too many libertarian thinking people. There was not many people talk about Austrian economics. But what about today? How many? I've been delighted so far with getting the campus. I hear you have some good professors on this campus that actually know a little bit about free market economy. But unfortunately, if you say, why do they do this in Congress? Are they evil? Yeah, a bunch of them are. Outright evil, and they're after power. But a lot of them are there with good intentions, and a lot of them there are convinced, this is what I was taught in school. They were never taught in school about the Federal Reserve. If I was teaching them about the Federal Reserve, I said, get rid of it. That's exactly what the founders wanted. They didn't want it started. Jefferson got rid of the first attempt at the central bank, and Jackson got rid of another one, and now we've been living with another one from the Progressive era, from the Woodrow Wilson era that gave us Federal Reserve and income taxes and a foreign policy of disaster. Just think of the damage that has been done with the Wilson foreign policy. We still essentially follow that. I am convinced in my own mind, if we had had more resistance against Wilson saying that for the glory of America we have to go in and participate in the slaughter in Europe, that we wouldn't have had World War II, because that led to the Treaty of Versailles and permitted the rise of Hitler. All these things. So one thing leads to another, but we need people that understand the issues. Then back to what can you do? will it ever be a time that you have to resist? I think so. You know, one person that I admired, and he stood up to it, he practiced peaceful civil disobedience, and they made him a political prisoner till well in his old age, kept him in chains, and he died there. And that's Erwin Schiff's dad. Or Peter Schiff's dad, Erwin Schiff, was put in prison and died there. And
that's Peter Schiff's dad.
What he was charged with was speaking out and preaching the gospel of the illegality under the Constitution of the income tax. And whether he was right or wrong is irrelevant. As much as, I mean, it makes it worse because I happen to think he was right. But they did that, and then they arrested him and they put him in prison. They finally released him, and he went back and they said, "You can't ever say another word about this again." And he was out in an audience. I guess he was talking about the weather, and somebody asked him a question about it, and he answered it. And they said, "Oh, you just overextended. You're going back to prison." They went back and put him in prison for life. It wasn't a life sentence, but he was 70-some years old, go for 3 years. So, to think he did, I think, was the right thing. It is civil disobedience and nonviolent. And I don't personally practice that, but I admire people who are willing to do it because I look up to what Martin Luther King had done. I look up to Gandhi, what he accomplished by changing, the whole nature of the British Empire. So there are other ways of doing it, because I happen to be very strong into the nonviolent thing, because that's what libertarianism is all about. I mean, think about what kind of world we would have if everybody who said, this libertarian stuff sounds pretty good. I think I might like to do what's the basic rule of this? Libertarians, do they sort of take a pledge? Yeah, in a way, libertarian does. They'll never initiate violence against somebody else unless somebody does something to them. That is no aggression. Well, what a wonderful world that would be. If nobody was committing aggression, of course there's always going to be bad people, and the bad people have to be taken care of, but not by the United Nations and somebody else. I think we can take care of that. I think the Second Amendment might take care of a few of them. But we didn't have, if you look at education, abuse of education, we haven't had federal government control of public education until recent years. So we can do a lot locally. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that each city and township can't devise some system. I was thinking the other day, if you had any type of voluntary, I don't really like the word police, but community activities to watch and share security. But when you think about it, you say, well, why would they do that if they have some type of authority and will arrest somebody or stop somebody from breaking in? There's something that we still do, but less so than now. But all the small towns, and I'm sure there are plenty still, all the volunteerism in the fire department. And they come together and they do a lot of good things. And now, as a matter of fact, some of those employees, even by state governments and state governments, are helping to bankrupt the country. If you look at the pension system, and the pension system is indirectly a burden for you because that's a burden on the whole system. But the big burden, of course, is the obligations, the $22 trillion, that's significant. So how about the $225 trillion of financial obligation that the federal government has? All these promises, all these lies, oh, we'll take care of you, it's for free, this sort of thing. But the economic system, my opinion, is very, very fragile. I don't believe we've ever been here before. We've never had a paper currency, a fiat currency that was so worldwide and so ingrained in all the countries. This fiat currencies and debasing currencies have been around for a long time. Even when they had gold standards, they would be debased. But it's never been like this before. And what do they do to try to prevent that information coming out? I believe, that gold is very important for several reasons. But somebody would say, well, if gold's so important and it's real money, why isn't, and there's all this debt, And after QEs, why isn't gold, $10,000 and this sort of thing? And the thing of it is, the governments over the centuries have always known that gold is the ultimate money. No matter what you do, you can try to invent, you can have substitutes, and you can do all these kind of things. Hopefully the government will let us have options. But if governments are involved, they want monopoly control of the money. They always want a monopoly. And the king always gets control of it, and they have legal tender laws. And we have legal tender laws. That's why one of my arguments in my proposals while in Washington was introducing legislation that eliminated the legal tender laws, that you could use anything you want, and you didn't have to use the fiat money. But there was a interesting time that happened in 1979. There's something here probably remember it. 1979 was the end of a real bad economic decade, and that was after they tried to pay for the guns and butter of Vietnam War and Johnson's welfare state. That there was a huge gap in the economy, went to the dollar. It was a real monster. Interest rates went to 21% and inflation to 15%. So something had to be done. For some reason or another, I can't remember how it occurred, but Volcker became the chairman. I was on the banking committee, so I was invited over there to have a private breakfast with him. And I had one staff person go with me, and Volcker staffer came in, and we were gabbing a little bit because Volcker hadn't arrived for the breakfast. But Volcker came in, and this was at a period of time when gold had been $35 an ounce fixed, price fixing for all those years. But when Bretton Woods crashed in 1971, that meant the market overcame it and pushed it out, and gold started soaring and went up to, as high as $800 at that time. But I remember Volcker coming in, and he was very cordial. I sort of liked Volcker, at least for the recent discussion. But he didn't come over and say, "Oh, hi, Ron, how are you?" He went to his staffer. He says, "What's the price of gold?" And that to me is so important because gold was measuring what he was doing. Gold is still a measurement of what government is doing and how long it's going to last. So they have every reason in the world to rig the price of gold. So if you're a gold bug and you're buying gold and you say, "Oh, it should be a lot higher." Yeah, probably so. But they've always done it. We rigged the price of gold from the time Roosevelt stole the gold. They kept the gold from us 35 up to 75, and then it was kept at $35 an ounce. But they have every reason in the world to manipulate the price of gold. In 1975, gold was being bought and sold, but it was still illegal for us to own it. And I think it was January 1st, it was going to be allowed for Americans to buy gold again. And a lot of Americans, including myself, we knew how to buy gold. Even under those circumstances, we could. So people's anticipation was, as soon as the Americans can buy gold, gold is going to skyrocket. Well, first thing is it was already discounted. They had built it. That was part of the reason, because everybody knew it was going to be legal. But the other thing is Treasury and the IMF dumped tons of gold on the day that it became legal again. Once again, trying to teach gold bugs a lesson. I think it still exists, so that's why you don't get the real information. But ultimately, all paper money fails. This one is going to fail. Debt is key. And the other thing that is of great interest to me and to anybody who cares about the marketplace are interest rates. Now, why in the world, if you're printing money, the money would depreciate, when you want more interest to pay for the depreciating rate of your currency? Oh, and the government said, "Well, we're not depreciating fast enough. Our goal is to make it depreciate by 2% and this sort of thing." So they keep working on it. But interest rates are key to the market economy. And right now, low interest rates do stimulate. And it's done. Trump has his ear to it, and he's accomplished it. He said, keep those interest rates low and don't raise them. It's good for the stock market. And he literally has used those words. Everybody knew that the Fed is there for the stock market. So the low interest rates is equivalent to higher stock prices, but it causes the distortion, it causes the debt, it causes the malinvestment, and it causes the bubbles to form. And we had a bubble that had to deflate a bit in 2008 and 2009. Most people think after 2009 everything's been rosy. No, if you look at that carefully, about 6 years before this thing came in, and some of the benefits, the temporary benefits came since QE, because it's just money coming up here. The amazing thing is, and this is understandable in Austrian economics, it's what people think it is. If they think it's okay, and subjectively, there's still a lot of people in the world will take dollars. We all take dollars because they're still usable. So as long as that happens, and interest rates say, look, they're going to get away with this forever, and they're going to keep running this up until it busts. Now, why young people like you have to think about it is because you can't hide from it unless you go a long way from here. But it looks like even if you travel, you're not safe. Besides, the whole thing that is of any interest, I think, to any of us is the fact that we ought to try to improve things. There's no reason why we can't. We know more about sound economics now than we ever have before. It's sound money, it's a free market, it's low taxes, it's the giving up of the initiation of violence would do a whole lot. And I get excited about all this because I look at it from the long term and a big perspective. Most people look at it, this administration, that administration. But I think of what's going on in the world, in the unhistorical world that we didn't have much recording. We've had recorded history, basically for about 5,000 years. We've had the rule of law, but, over 5,000 years at least. We've had, things like the Hammurabi Code and the Ten Commandments that set some rules. It's basically pretty wise. They advise don't steal and don't kill and don't hurt people and don't lie. And those are basic principles that are very valuable. But that's a long time ago. The first book that was ever written was like 5,000 years ago. And that still seems like a long time ago, but the solar system is 14 billion years old. So we're a drop in the bucket here. You're living in the middle of an experiment that has gone on, and it may end. It may end. Who knows how long it will last. But it's unbelievable what has happened in a short period of time. In some ways, we should be so optimistic. Look at what technology has done, even in spite of all these mistakes and all this killing going on. Look at how technology has helped a lot of people have a house and have a car, and their standard of living, certainly in this country, has gone up. So things have improved tremendously over those years. I keep thinking, my dad was born in 1904, and in relating to his stories, he grew up delivering milk in a horse and buggy. And just think of that, it's 100 years or so ago, over 100 years, that he was delivering milk in a horse and buggy, and they didn't have, automobiles, they didn't have radios, and all the technology. And then the 20th century had tremendous, but just think of what's going on right now. It's unbelievable about what's happening. And there is this great wealth, but why are we unhappy? And I think there's a reason for it. First thing is, I think freedom, and even a relatively free society, produces a tremendous abundance. And people key in on this and they want to control it. And it's greed and envy and power. And they do that and then they forget about what were the basic fundamentals that created this system. Was it some money and justice in the courts and this sort of thing? So this is to me just really amazing with this technology, the tremendous. But my sad part is that
so much of the technology, not only has it helped us live better, but it's also helped us fight wars. You know, just think of all this technology now. We don't have to march the troops into Yemen to say that we're killing kids down there, but we can participate and be the key person, give out all the information and sell them the weapons and make profits doing that. So the technology has done a lot of destruction because you can have nuclear power. Nuclear power in peaceful use purposes to take care of any need for power ever. And if it used in a proper manner, it may well be the source of energy that would be best. But the whole thing is, though, that what is neglected, it seems like today there's a lot of talk about the cycles, the 80-year cycle coming and going, and it's destined, it's going to go down, and man will never improve because they go through this and they have to have a big war and cleanse the system. I don't just accept that. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that I don't want to think that you can't change things, because I think you can. I think ideas have consequences, and I think ideas come not from large groups of people or from the collective. They come from individuals like you that decide, you know, this is good, I'm going to participate in this, and I know that my main goal, and I learned it so strongly from Leonard Reed, was do your best to understand it. And he always said, you know, if you understand it and present it, somebody will make use of it. And you don't have to push yourself around and say, this is the way you do it. Sometimes if you'll find a politician who says, you know, I am the smartest thing in the world and I can give you everything you want for free, and you know, and that sort of thing. It doesn't work. But the ideas do have consequences. I think our ideas are always progressing. But the big thing is can we ever challenge the nature of the human being from being, you know, always wanting to fight with each other? And right now there's a concerted effort because they think there's a group that thinks they can improve themselves by this cultural Marxism, and that is control. That is the opposite of freedom, and that has to do a lot with aggression. And so they're the opposite of a libertarian. A libertarian has to be pretty tolerant of other people, and that doesn't go with people with a lot of conservatives. You mean they can do anything they want? Yeah, as long as they don't hurt anybody. Oh, I don't know. That doesn't sound good. They might drink too much beer. You know, it's the tolerance that is important, and it's of course the understanding of how things work. But you know, we might say that we are better than ABC country. We might say, well, you know, we were really a good economy because we were libertarian. If we looked at Venezuela, it would not justify us going down there and say, look, we're libertarians and look how wonderful we are, and this is the way you should. No. The only way I think you can influence is by setting an example. You set an example in personal ways. That's what children learn. They see it by examples being set. But tolerance is one thing. Liberals cannot tolerate the fact that some people have more than others unless the other ones who are getting more. The ones who are making the plan.